Charles Manson and the Manson Family, Nightmare on Cielo Drive. That night, Los Angeles did not sleep. In the luxurious mansion at 10050 Cielo Drive, where yellow lights shone from the wide windows, the screams of an 8-month pregnant woman tore through the night. She was Sharon Tate, the young actress, an icon of Hollywood in the late 1960s, wife of director Roman Polanski. When the police arrived, they could not believe their eyes. 5 bodies, blood all over the walls, and the word written in blood, pig, pig. The case not only shook Los Angeles, but also ended the summer of love illusion and exposed one of the most horrifying cult nightmares in American history. The 1960 seconds, America was exploding with freedom intoxication. Rock music, drugs, peace, anti-war, hippies, love, and light. Amidst that colorful scene, a small man with long, messy hair and hypnotic eyes, calling himself the prophet of the new era, began to attract dozens of lost youths. His name was Charles Manson. Charles Manson, the prophet of hell. Charles Manson was born in 1934 inches, Cincinnati, Ohio, to a broken family. His mother, a 16-year-old alcoholic girl, was arrested for robbery. His father fled. Manson's childhood was a long series of years of wandering, reform schools, and prison. By the age of 32, he had spent more than half his life behind bars, but in prison he learned 2 things: music and how to manipulate people. He loved the Beatles, especially Helter Skelter, a song about chaos. But in Manson's mind, Helter Skelter was more than just a song. It was a prophecy about a race war between blacks and whites, where he would be the savior, leading the chosen ones to heaven on earth. In 1967, as the hippie movement blossomed in California, Manson was released from prison. He went to San Francisco, where thousands of young people were dropping out of school, smoking LSD, believing in cosmic love. In that atmosphere, Manson became a strange star. He spoke of peace, of God, of freedom. But his deep voice and hypnotic eyes made the listener seem truly hypnotized. He said, "I don't teach you about God. I am God, and you are my people." Young girls, runaways, lost, began to follow him. He called them family. In that family, he was father, teacher, God, lover, the one who decided life and death. Spahn Ranch, Charles Manson's kingdom. Manson and his followers stopped at Spahn Ranch, an old film studio on the outskirts of Los Angeles, once used to film cowboy movies. The ranch owner, George Spahn, over 80 years old and blind, was taken care of by Manson's young girls. In return, he let the group stay for free. Here, the family lived in a separate world. They grew vegetables, used LSD, had group sex, and listened to Manson preach. He preached that the world was about to end, that black people would rise up and kill all white people, but they were too stupid to lead, and only Manson could rule the new humanity. He said, "When blood runs in the streets, I will come out of my cave, and they will call me King." In the eyes of young men blinded by LSD, Manson was not a criminal. He was the savior of the new world, the absolute faithful. The family was not just a bunch of hippies. It was a group of broken souls, people looking for a father, looking for God, looking for meaning. There was Susan Atkins, Sadie Mae Glutz, a girl who used to be a stripper; Patricia Krenwinkel, a girl from a wealthy family who dropped out of school because she was lonely; Leslie Van Houten, a good student who left home to find the light; and Tex Watson, the handsome Texan who would become Manson's right-hand man. They believed absolutely. They called him Jesus Christ reincarnated. Every time Manson looked at someone and said, "You must die to be reborn," that person would fall to his knees, cry, and thank him. From dream to nightmare. In 1968, Manson dreamed of musical fame. He met Dennis Wilson, drummer for the Beach Boys, one of the most famous bands in America. Wilson, infatuated with Manson's girls, let the group live in his mansion. Manson wrote songs, played guitar, and believed he would become famous worldwide. But when Wilson introduced him to producer Terry Melcher, son of actress Doris Day. Melcher was not interested. When Melcher refused to sign a recording contract, Manson considered it a betrayal. He vowed to show Hollywood real power. And the house Melcher once rented, 10050 Cielo Drive, became the most haunted symbol in American crime history. The night of destiny, the 8th of August 1969. Manson ordered Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian to go to Cielo Drive. He said, "Kill everyone in there. Kill them in the most horrible way. Let the world know that the era of Helter Skelter has begun." Inside the house, Sharon Tate, 26 years old, 8 months pregnant, was with friends. Jay Sebring, hairstylist. Abigail Folger, heir to the Folgers coffee brand. Wojciech Frykowski, Polish screenwriter. And Stephen Parent, and one 8-year-old boy visiting an acquaintance. Around 12:30 p.m. they broke in. Tex Watson shot Stephen Parent dead outside the gate. Inside, the remaining 4 were tortured, beaten, tied up, and brutally killed. Sharon Tate begged for her unborn child. Susan Atkins coldly replied, "I don't care about your child," then stabbed repeatedly. On the wall, Susan wrote "pig" in Sharon Tate's blood. When the police arrived the next morning, the scene haunted them for the rest of their lives. Blood was everywhere. Sharon's body had been stabbed 16 times and was hung from a rafters with a rope. An investigator said, "I've seen a lot of murders, but I've never seen such brutality. It was more like a ritual sacrifice than a murder." Another night of madness. Less than 24 hours later, Manson ordered another murder. He chose Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, a couple living in upscale Los Feliz. They broke in, tied them up, and used knives and forks to carve war into their stomachs. On the walls they wrote, "Helter Skelter, death to pigs, rise all in blood, 2 nights, 7 dead." No one understood the motive. The whole city was in fear. Hollywood people bought guns, locked their doors, hired bodyguards. The investigation began. At first, police did not connect the 2 murders. The Sharon Tate case was assigned to the LAPD, the LaBianca case to a different department. No clear fingerprints, no physical evidence, just strange blood writing. The media dubbed it the Tate-LaBianca murders, and Hollywood went into a panic. One newspaper reported, "The innocence of the 60 seconds died on Cielo Drive. Savage, mysterious, and unsolved." In the early months, hundreds of theories emerged. Mafia revenge? Satanic sacrifice? Psychotic serial killer? No one thought of a group of hippies. But clues began to emerge when police discovered an earlier murder at Spahn Ranch, where Manson and the family lived. A former member of the group, Susan Atkins, was arrested for other crimes in the jail and bragged that she killed Sharon Tate. "I killed Sharon Tate." The words came out in the middle of the night in a women's prison cell, small as a pinprick, but enough to shake the whole of America. In October 1969, Susan Atkins, a loyal member of the Manson family, was arrested for armed robbery. In prison, she bragged to her fellow inmates that she had been in a famous Hollywood murder. When her fellow inmates asked, "Are you serious?" Susan smiled faintly. "I wasn't just there. I had a knife." She recounted the details. How Sharon Tate begged, how blood sprayed on the wall, how they wrote "pig" in blood. Those words were reported to the prison guards, and a few days later, the Los Angeles police immediately reopened the Cielo Drive file. They didn't believe it. No one thought the shocking Hollywood case was related to a group of hippies living in an abandoned movie studio. But when they checked, each piece fit perfectly. Susan Atkins, present on the night of the 8th of August 1969. Tex Watson, the leader of the group. Patricia Krenwinkel, whose fingerprints matched those found at the scene. And the name that appeared in every testimony, Charles Manson. When God was exposed in December 1969, the police raided Spahn Ranch. They arrested not only Manson, but also more than 20 members of the family. Manson was found hiding in a small closet, his eyes blazing as he was pulled out. He did not resist, only saying one chilling sentence, "You think you are arresting me, but in fact, you are arresting yourself. In the police car, he laughed, humming, Helter Skelter, Helter Skelter. He believed himself to be a prophet, a messenger of the end times. And when he was handcuffed, he still believed that the whole world was carrying out his plan, blindly loyal. In prison, the members of the family were fearless. They sang, laughed, even tattooed an X on their foreheads to show that they had abandoned human society. One girl told a reporter, "Charlie is everything. If he gives the order, I am ready to die." They considered murder a spiritual journey. Manson brainwashed them to the point of erasing the concept of good and evil. In their minds, murder was not a sin, but freeing the soul to go to the new world. When asked, "Why kill Sharon Tate?" Susan Atkins replied, "Because she is a symbol of the rotten society. Rich, famous, fake. We are just helping the world to be cleaner." The trial of the century. On the 15th of June, 1970, the trial of Charles Manson and his family members officially began in Los Angeles. The whole of America watched. This was more than just a murder case. It was the trial of an era where illusions of love and peace were crushed by violence and cultism. In the courtroom, Manson entered with a black X on his forehead, calling himself Jesus Christ. Reporters described him as someone who had just escaped from hell. Long hair, fiery eyes, crazy smile. When the judge asked, "What is your name?" Manson replied, "I am nobody. I am what you created." Outside the courtroom, dozens of his followers stood singing, placing flowers, and shouting, "Free Charlie," as if it were a religious ceremony. The media called them the Devil's Angels. Hysteria in the courtroom. The trial lasted for 9 months, the longest in California history at the time. Every day was a tragedy. Manson and the family girls often sang, laughed, or raised their hands to make the X sign when the judge read the indictment. Once, when the prosecutor described how Sharon Tate was killed, Susan Atkins burst out laughing. She screamed like in a Hollywood movie. The courtroom was silent. Manson continued to threaten the jury. He looked at them and whispered, "If I wanted to, with just one look, you would be dead in 24 hours. And what was more terrifying was that out there, his loyalists actually believed it. They camped around the courthouse, prayed, sang Beatles songs, and believed that Helter Skelter was about to happen, an Armageddon between good and evil. The chilling evidence. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi, who later wrote the famous book Helter Skelter, faced a nearly impossible challenge. How do you prove that someone who didn't actually kill anyone, but who, through his words, caused others to commit mass murder? Bugliosi reconstructs Manson's entire belief system. Helter Skelter, New World, Kill to Save, and shows that Manson himself was the mastermind of the psychological manipulation, using LSD and religion to create a fanatical army. When asked about his motives, Manson replied, "I didn't tell anybody to kill anybody. They just did what their spirit told them to do." And then he laughed. "If you want to blame the Beatles. They wrote the prophecies. I just followed them." Music, LSD, and the Devil's Prophecy. Manson believed that the Beatles' White Album contained a call to race war. He explained to the group that Helter Skelter was a code word for them to start killing wealthy white people, then blame it on black people, thus starting all-out war. After the war, Manson and the family would rise from the desert and rule the world. On LSD, these words became absolute truth. He turned Helter Skelter, the Beatles' cheerful song, into a Bible of blood and fanaticism. When the devil exposed himself, during the trial, Manson often sent hypnotic eyes to the family girls. Many times, when he raised his eyebrows slightly, they laughed or cried in unison, as if programmed. A reporter described, "The atmosphere in the courtroom was like a collective hypnosis. He controlled them with his gaze." Once, Manson suddenly jumped on the table, shouting, "I am your devil. I am your result. I am a product of American society." The security had to drag him out, but he still laughed. "You cannot kill me. I live in your heads." The verdict of the century. On the 25th of January 1971, after more than 200 days of trial, A jury convicted Charles Manson and 3 co-defendants, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. All 4 were sentenced to death by electric chair. When the verdict was read, Manson turned to reporters and said, "You are killing your own souls. I have won." Outside, his loyal followers carved deeper X's into their foreheads, chanting, "Helter Skelter is coming." Justice and irony. In 1972, California abolished the death penalty. Manson and the family's sentences were automatically commuted to life in prison. Once again, he escaped death. And in prison, Manson became a legend. Thousands of people wrote him letters. Some called him anti-system hero. Others asked to be his disciple. He replied to each letter, signing it, "Love, Charlie." A prison guard said, "He no longer needs a knife. He makes people shiver with his voice alone." Manson smiled, his hair disheveled, his beard long, and said in a television interview, "I never killed anyone. I only taught them love. They turned it into killing. You are the crazy ones." The whole of America was shocked. People did not know whether to fear him for his crimes, or for the terrifying calm of a man who no longer knew the boundary between good and evil. He once said, "When I die, I will become the wind. You will hear me every night." When the devil is mythologized. After his trial in 1971, Charles Manson and his family were imprisoned in a high-security prison. He never showed any remorse. In his early years, Manson still attracted fans, a sick paradox. Young girls, rebels, even underground artists saw him as a symbol of social resistance. They drew pictures of him, tattooed his face on their skin, and wrote love letters. Manson the Killer became the star of hell. In prison, he wrote poetry, composed music, read philosophy books, and continued to preach the Helter Skelter philosophy to the curious. A prison guard said, he would sit alone for hours, singing strange tunes. When someone approached, he would look up and say, "The world out there still doesn't understand me." Interviews that made America shiver. Many reporters and filmmakers sought Manson out to understand the mind of the devil, but most left in fear. He spoke quickly, changed his voice, laughed, and then suddenly fell silent. Once, when a reporter asked, "Do you feel guilty?" Manson replied, "Guilt? I only do what you dream of but don't dare to do. I am a mirror of your world, dirty, deceitful, and greedy." In a famous interview with CBS in 1981, he said straight into the camera, his eyes hypnotizing, "I don't kill people. I just turn on the switch in their heads. They do the rest." The reporter sitting opposite admitted, "I feel like I'm talking to something that doesn't belong to a human being." The persistent life of the Manson family. Although Manson was imprisoned, the family did not disappear. Outside, loyalists still lived, gathered, and spread Charlie's teachings. Some people set up websites, forums, and even sold shirts with Manson's image and the slogan, "No sense makes sense." Many young generations were curious, seeing him as a symbol of rebellious culture, not understanding that behind that smile were blood, tears, and destruction. Hollywood never forgot. After the case, all of Hollywood changed. In 1969, the city of Los Angeles seemed to wake up. The dream of freedom was over. Stars hired bodyguards, built high walls, and bought guns. The carefreeness of the 60 seconds, the parties, the LSD, the rock music, vanished overnight. One producer wrote, "Before Manson, Hollywood was a party. After Manson, Hollywood was a prison." The haunting of the case is deeply embedded in the American consciousness. Dozens of films, books, and television shows have explored it. Helter Skelter, 1976. Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 2019. Manson Family Vacation, 2015. And countless other documentaries. But the strange thing is, the more films there are, the more iconic Manson becomes, half demon, half legend. The death of the evil angels, members of the family, also aged in prison. Susan Atkins, who stabbed Sharon Tate, died of brain cancer in 2009 after 38 years in prison. Patricia Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten remained incarcerated until the 21st century, repeatedly asking for clemency, but always being denied. Leslie once said in an interview, "I was brainwashed." But my apology was never enough. Tex Watson, the executioner of the Night of Terror, became a devout man, writing books about repentance and redemption. But for the American people, no one can forgive the name Manson. The death of Charles Manson. Charles Manson died on the 19th of November 2017 at a hospital in California at the age of 83. The cause: heart failure and colon cancer. But when news of his death spread, the reaction of the United States was full of contradictions. One side gloated, "The devil is finally gone." The other side regretted, "A rebellious cultural icon is gone." Even his death became a media event. Some people auctioned off his hair, fought over his ashes, and even asked for a piece of bone to worship. A female fan wrote online, "Charlie didn't die. He melted into the universe." The world shuddered. A murderer turned into a spiritual icon. That's the paradox of the times. The legacy of obsession. More than half a century has passed. The name Charles Manson is still present in popular culture. In music, he is mentioned in songs by Marilyn Manson, Guns N' Roses, 9-Inch Nails. In movies, his image appears in dozens of psychological films and series. In criminological research, Manson has become a classic case of cult leader psychology. Someone who does not directly kill, but leads others to do it for him with absolute faith. Psychologists call it the Manson effect, when an individual has the ability to create beliefs so extreme that they turn people into tools. Manson didn't need a gun, they say. He just needed words. The story is not over yet. In many later interviews, former family members described how they felt after waking up from the coma. One person said, "I don't know how I could have trusted him so much. He wasn't special, but when I looked into his eyes, I felt swallowed up." That's what makes the Manson case such a permanent lesson in human vulnerability to psychological manipulation. Anyone, if they're weak, lonely, desperate for meaning, can fall victim to a Charles Manson. Unsolved mysteries. Even though Manson is dead, many questions remain. Did he truly believe in Helter Skelter? Or was he just using it to mask his hatred of Hollywood? Are there other members of the family who haven't been discovered? And why, after all these years, are people still obsessed with him? A criminologist writes, "We don't fear Manson because he kills. We fear him because he makes others kill, and makes us realize that there is a part of each of us that is susceptible to manipulation." Warning of the century. After the Manson case, America began to realize the deadly power of false religion, of cult leaders, of mass fanaticism. Since then, investigative and psychological agencies have launched a series of research programs on how to identify and break the brainwashing model. But ironically, Manson himself, the cause of the nightmare, has become a living textbook for modern criminology. Last words from hell. A reporter once asked him, "If you could go back to 1969, would you do anything differently?" Manson looked into the distance, chuckled, "I don't follow time. I am time." It was the final, arrogant answer of a man who believed he was God, even as he rotted behind bars. And so, more than half a century later, the night of Cielo Drive has never been peaceful. Anyone who has passed by that mansion, where Sharon Tate and her friends were murdered, says the wind there smells of blood, and the darkness seems to retain the screams of a young mother pleading for her unborn child. I don't kill people. I just blow crazy wind at them, and that wind never stops. Charles Manson.